Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Dynamic Thriving Podcast. I am your host, Mary Ann Pack, spiritual medium, best-selling author, publisher, and joy advocate, my favorite, guiding you into all things life transformational. And this is the Unmuted Voices series. We're talking about how we come into the world so purely and ready to share the life of who we are, the expression in life, and our little voices just get covered over with indoctrination and beliefs that are not true for who we really are. And so, in coming through the other side, the people that are on this podcast are telling the stories of how they found and unmuted their voice. And it's not always a physical voice necessarily. It could be however you express life. So I am so thrilled to have my guest, Lindsey Linton, is with me today. Welcome, Lindsey.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
I am so glad you are here because we're going to have a great show talking all about how you unmuted your voice.
Yep.
So we're going to jump right in. So when did you find that it wasn't safe or maybe just wasn't a good way to live by and muting your voice? How did you find yourself in that? How did you come about believing that you had to mute your voice and it wasn't really safe to be little Lindsey?
So for me, I grew up in Frederick in a small town called Yellow Springs, or a small community. And I'm one of three sisters. I have a younger sister who's 4 years younger than me, but I also have a twin sister. So obviously growing up as a twin was a little bit different than how everybody else may grow up. And, when I was younger, I was really shy in school, and I don't totally blame that on being a twin. I had some other factors in the way too. In my childhood, my biological father was actually really physically abusive, mentally abusive. So that was a tough thing to live through. And obviously I would bring that with me to school. And, I was blessed to have a wonderful mom who was loving and, helped me through it. But, it was really tough to go through. And on top of that, being a twin, growing up was just slightly different. As you can imagine, twins share everything. I remember growing up, on my grandmother's side and my mom's side, we would, go to her house for Christmas, and we had a fairly big family, and all the kids would be sitting in the middle. We'd be so excited to open our presents. And she would say, she would go youngest to oldest, oldest to youngest. And when she would say, let's do youngest to oldest, I would get so excited because I'm just a minute younger than my twin sister. So I'd be like, yes. And I would kind of give her this smirk, like, I get to see what we're getting first, because with twins, we would get the same present. It would be like the same sweaters, two different colors, or a different word, or we'd both get Barbie dolls. So I was just so excited. I was like, I get to see what we're getting first. This is so cool. And, and she would still act excited. And if it was the other way around, I would too. And it's not a bad thing. It's just how it is. Twins just always got treated that way, where you were just sort of one and the same. And, in our community where we lived, we were one of three sets of twins in our graduating class. So it's just, twins were just not a thing. And especially, at that time, when I was in school, people were just so fascinated by twins. They just thought it was the coolest thing. And, which made, making friends not super hard, because, everybody just was drawn to us. But in that sense, because twins, and the way we were kind of a package deal, or seen that way. I obviously didn't really feel like I was my own person. And, throughout the years, kind of took some time to really develop that. And there's really no, guide or rule book to being a twin. You can Google things, but nobody tells you, hey, this is the point in your life where you're supposed to kind of become your own person. You're just kind of doing your thing. And, I was kind of blessed that my mom was really big on just us being our own people. She was all about us trying to find what we wanted to do and interests. And she pushed us each to try different things to figure out what we like to do. Of course, we had common interests. We both played softball and were, really enjoyed playing that. But as we got older, I discovered I really liked art. My twin sister really liked music, and she played the saxophone and did the marching band. In college, I was in dodgeball club. We just kind of went separate ways. And really college is where that started. We started to just find our own way, and it was a little uncomfortable. It was different for me because I was so used to being attached to the hip for her. But that's really kind of, being a twin, really, it's different, and it's a life-changing experience. And anybody that's a twin out there is probably going through it too. And it's, you still go through it, and it'll forever be something that we work through together. So.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting because my older sisters that are 2.5 years older than me are identical twins. So I understand what you're saying. It's presents are the same, and you're kind of just, this is like one entity, but it's really two people.
Yeah.
So they really didn't get to shine their own life expression. It was always Judy and Janet.
Yeah.
It was almost like one word.
Yeah, we got the Linton twins, the twins, and if you look at even celebrities, look at the Olsen twins, how often do you see something about just Mary-Kate or just Ashley? Most times you Google and you see the Olsen twins. And I'm sure they've been dealing with that their whole life too. It's a tough thing. It's really hard. And it wasn't until recently, like, I would say within the last 5 years, that I've really started to get comfortable with just being me. And it was really tough. I especially with work, work was kind of the hardest thing because obviously we have two different careers. She works in accounting. I'm in marketing. And, I would go to work and go to these work events, and I would feel uncomfortable because I felt like unless I had her there, I was half there. It wasn't wholly me. And I would come home just in tears, so upset because I felt just like a loser. I felt like I didn't fit in. I felt like just kind of not me and uncomfortable. And it took me until recently to really kind of just own myself and say, this is me. This is how I am. I like different things than my sister. And I'm just going to kind of be proud of that and just live through it and live by it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what were some of those, I call them indoctrinated beliefs because they're sometimes subtle messages, or sometimes they're a blatant, this is the way we're going to do it. From our religion, for me, it was more that. It could have been just family. We only do it this way, or this is how you're treated because you're a twin. Or, if it's cultural, societal, how did these beliefs about who you were, almost not an individual, that you took on yourself, and it made you play small and mute your voice? What were some of those beliefs that you took on that continued to make you mute your voice through the years?
Well, it's mainly society that, everybody just thinks twins are a package deal. And, if one twin wants to do something, the other must too. And, it was tough to grow up like that because, we each like different things. So we really had to kind of push ourselves a little bit. And like I said, my mom was a big advocate in making sure, she made sure we didn't take the same classes with the same teachers. I'm sure they probably could have done that, but we really tried to do our separate things. But at the end of the day, it's still, you were together. So, and I would say too, my childhood, it didn't bother me as much because you're just kind of, you're little, you're still figuring things out and you're just a kid. And in a way, being a twin was almost a crutch for me because I didn't have to really try to make my own friends because I already had one. And we also attracted so many people to us because of how fascinated people were by twins, became friends with other sets of twins like the ones that we graduated with, and it just was so easy. And when I got older, it was just a slap in the face, because you're in the real world and you're not going to be going everywhere together, and you're not going to be, doing everything together your whole life. And at some point you have to realize that we're going to have to split up and go separate ways. We can't spend our whole life together. I mean, certainly we will have the best relationship until the end, because we've just built that throughout the years. But that was something that was hard to accept, was that one day I'm going to have to, live my own life, and I'm going to have to let go. And it was tough to have to, maneuver that, because you just don't think about it when you're little. And when you start to get older, I would say like probably college was when I kind of started to accept, and even in later, like to where I am now, that things are going to have to change, and I'm going to have to push myself to get through that change. Nobody's going to help me with that. I mean, sure, you have support, but you're going to have to do the work yourself to get there.
Right. So, in muting your voice, I know it affects so many areas of our lives, our relationships, maybe our choice of college, what we want to study, our sometimes even our finances, these, that limiting ourselves of who we are, or thinking we have to, or just it being ingrained in us. How did that affect like your relationships, or maybe what you studied in college, what you looked forward to, your work, even if there was any kind of a spiritual side to your life? What did this muting affect in your life?
Yeah, because we did everything together. We decided to go to college together. But when we got there, in the beginning, that first year was tough. We were both like attached to the hip, and we just didn't want to let go of each other. And then I would say probably sophomore year, we kind of just started breaking out and doing our own things. That was when my sister decided she wanted to join the marching band. And then I started getting involved in dodgeball. And, and at the time I was in the art and design school. So I was kind of like making my own friendships. We did have really, really funny situations where I remember one time we both took the same gen ed class, but at different times. She took it first, and she said, "Hey, this class, it's super fun and easy. You should take it." So I took this class. And when she took the class, she ended up meeting a friend in there, and they became really tight. Well, then I took the class, and I also met a friend. Later found out that this friend and that friend were also friends. I was like, we just can't stop twinning. We just keep doing this. That was kind of, we just tried to do our own things. But then at the end of the day, we would come together. Relationships are tough. Friendships, we just shared a lot of friends. And recently, we've kind of just have our own friends now. And that was a pretty hard change to adjust to. And I work with a coach and had to kind of work with her to get through that, because it was a struggle. And I hit a point where I was like, I want to be independent. I want to be able to go out and do my own thing, but I also really love my twin sister. And she was kind of helping me through it. And I got to a good point. Well, then I noticed that my twin sister was doing it, and I almost got offended. I was like, she's not inviting me out to go and hang out with these friends. What the heck, And my coach had to remind me. She's like, well, remember like 6 months ago, you were saying you wanted to do that too. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. So it was like a growth spurt for a while there of just working through the changes and trying to go separately and independently. And dating is just always awkward for twins. You have those like stereotypes, and I've had people all the time say like, oh, because you're twins, are you going to marry twins? And we're like, oh, or you have people that date you and then it didn't work out. So then they decide to date your sister. And that's just awkward. We've had that happen too. And reality is maybe there's a twin out there that, a set of twins that like that, but I would say most twins don't. And they just want to meet their own people. You're twins, but at the end of the day, you're your own people, and you want to meet someone special that's just for you. you don't want it to be like another package deal. And keep in mind, you've shared everything most of your life. So you get to a point where you're like, I don't think I want to share anymore. I just want to have this for me. So
Yeah. Yeah, you already talked about some of these aha moments that have started to come. So, what were some of those moments? Because, sometimes it's a big jolt. For me, it was a jolt of crashing at 34, my health. But, and then after that, it was like this small awakenings that kept happening. So, what were some more of those aha moments for you that really lets you know, oh my gosh, it is time. I have got to unmute my voice. I've got to be me as an individual.
yeah, I think you go through different chapters of your life, and every chapter, it was like a new growth spurt, I'll say, because you just realize, like, okay, I like what we were doing before, but I kind of like this new direction I'm going. And it's like you just kind of kept building on that. And truthfully, I will tell you that my biggest aha was in the last year. I got so comfortable with myself and just confident, and I really found myself. And I said, I think I really want to go take a trip out of the country by myself. So last month, I took a trip, first ever solo trip to Ireland, first ever out of the country too. And it was an experience. And for me, being by myself on that trip was just the most incredible experience ever, because that was the first time I'd never been away from my sister for my birthday. Keep in mind, we shared our birthdays every year, and I did that as a birthday trip. So that was the first time that was really special, and I got to just enjoy my birthday by myself. And that trip was a learning experience. The first day was kind of bumpy. I almost missed my flight, had to be escorted to the gate, and literally watched the gate close as I got on the plane. Halfway through the flight, I felt really sick, flagged down the flight attendant, shuffled through the aisle. By the time I got to the aisle, I ended up fainting, and I woke up with my feet in the air. So I land in Ireland, and I'm like, this trip is doomed. I shouldn't be here, right? I miss my family. I miss my dog. I miss my friends. And it just quickly became this trust building thing with myself. I met so many wonderful people that just helped me along the way. And the lady that I worked with to plan my trip as a travel coach, she had always said to me that, whenever you go on trips by yourself, you're going to come across people that help you in some way. And she said she always looked at them as her angels. She's like, even if you're just sitting at a bus stop and you just look to them and say, hey, is this headed in this direction? They could say one word, and it's like, they just helped me in the biggest way. And I just thought, wow, Ireland must be heaven, because there were angels everywhere I went. They were just fantastic. And I met so many friends there. And I think the thing that was so incredible is that before that trip, I thought that I had found myself. And I found myself so much more just being alone and in that environment, and just having to adapt to a foreign country that I'd never been to. It was incredible. It was life-changing. And I tell people all the time, I feel like I've been reborn. You come home just with a different perspective. I'm not so closed off. I'm looking around at the world now. And that trust piece was such a big one, because once you start to just make your own decisions by yourself in a place that you've never been, you can really make any decision after that, because it's just, you're on the fly trying to, make your own choices. And in the past, I'd always kind of made choices with my twin, and we kind of leaned on each other. And so it was it was a shock to be thrown in an environment like that, but I was ready for it, and it helped me grow in the best way. And I'll tell you too, between trips, I rented a car when I was there. And those were those moments where I really got in my own head and started to reflect a little bit on how the trip was going. And there were a lot of emotions, and I would cry between places I went, and they were tears of joy. They were just the most wonderful feelings that I had with myself. And for the first time in my life, I actually felt butterflies for myself. I was feeling butterflies, and I realized that is self-love. That is what self-love truly feels like. So it was such a journey, but I'm so grateful for that trip, and I will never forget it. And I think that trip really set me into gear for just the future and kind of getting ready for, being my own person and finding myself even more. And I'm sure my whole life I'll be figuring more out about myself. I mean, you're not going to find everything about yourself in one place, and things aren't going to be perfect forever, but you grow and you evolve and you just figure it out. And every opportunity that comes your way, you're just becoming stronger and stronger and just a different person. And it's just at this point, I feel like I'm kind of ready for that next step and just taking off, and really embracing me and embracing my unique self too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's when you can peel away those layers, the real you comes out. And I always like to say that our mess is our message. So, what we've worked through, the mess that we've transformed through, now makes available for us something so different, that it tends to become our message, how we live life more fully. Sometimes it's affects our work, or it maybe completely changes our work, and we go in a different direction. So how has your mess become your message now? How are you living life now? How are you expressing life? What is that message that you are sharing with the world because of these aha moments, because of these awakenings and this transformation?
Well, I think that the trip definitely helped me a lot with that. And there were things that I learned, like for instance, I'm a planner. Anybody that looks at my Outlook, it's color coded. I won't have a meeting if it's not on my calendar. It's how I get things done. So of course, when I went on my trip, I was like, all right, let's plan this stuff out. This is what I'm doing on this day and that day. And by the end of that trip, I realized that I was the most relaxed and most happy when I had a day where I was just going off and exploring. So of course, when I came back, it changed things for me, because now I'm like, I don't want to have to feel regimented and have things structured in that way. And sure, you have deadlines, but I want to be relaxed and I like that feeling of just taking my time and not having to worry and just sticking with a schedule. So that changed me a lot. And I'll say too that since my trip, I'm more open-minded, and because of it, it gives off a different energy. And I've noticed like work events and just, through meeting people all over the place, it's like you're more approachable than you ever were, or at least I feel that way. I feel like, people are able to come up to me and talk to me more than before, or maybe I just didn't pay attention to it before. But I feel like there's a different energy that I bring, and it's really special. But as we continue to grow, both of us, and go separate ways, I think it's going to kind of change for both of us. And for her, I've tried to convince her to take her own trip too. And I don't know that she will, but I think she's on her own path to growth, and we're both doing our own work to kind of get there. But yeah, I mean, I would say like the energy is different. I just feel like I approach things differently, and I look at the world in a different way.
Right. Yeah, as you're coming in and allowing yourself to be to utilize that freedom, and to let that be your guide. That spontaneity, rather than this regimented schedule, at 10 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, at 12, having that regimented schedule, just allowing for inspiration. I can see that, allowing for that spontaneity of, oh, that looks interesting. Let's go over there, kind of thing. So I can definitely see that.
Yeah. And especially, I mean, being someone that, studied art, enjoys doing art, artists tend to do better when they're, got a little bit more time to think and be creative. And I found that, those moments where I have that time to kind of, I don't have 100 things going on or things scheduled, those are the times where my brain really starts to churn out some really good ideas. So.
Mm-hmm. So is that like you're talking about with your art, do you feel like that creativity or that inspiration comes through as you're doing artwork? which then filters into the rest of how you're expressing life?
Sometimes, and sometimes even just seeing different things, it gives you ideas. But I don't know. I'm just one of those people where if I've got like too much intense things happening, my brain just can't flow. I can't think, and it's the worst feeling. And you almost get into like a designer's block because you're like, I don't know how to think of anything at the moment because I've got all these other things I'm thinking about. So those are the moments where I'm the most creative and in general. But really, I mean, sometimes I see things, sometimes I'm just coming up with it on the fly. But I do feel like I've definitely grown and become a lot more creative just throughout the years, just from kind of evolving. So
Yeah. It's so beautiful. I love that. And I so appreciate you coming on, Lindsey, and sharing this story because there so many people will be reading the book and listening to the podcast and touching into these stories, these individual things, saying, that's my story, or that's very similar. I understand that. Because, even as me listening to your story about being a twin and all that you go through, and for me, having identical twin sisters that were older than me, and I was just always this little outcast kind of person because you don't break in between twins. And, you know, um, it's just a different life, even when you're a sister of a set of twins.
well, and I think about my youngest sister and kind of what her childhood was like, and it makes me sad because I mean, and we were all three close. We played together, and we bonded really well. But it's imagine being on the other side of that. As hard as it is being a twin, it's like you could be kind of the third wheel most of the time, and I'm really looking forward to. I mean, we've me and my twin sister have talked about just in the next couple years kind of going separate ways. So, and she's starting to look into maybe finding her own place to live. And because she's realized she likes the city. I like being out in the country, and it's part of us growing as we're figuring out, we've learned to compromise with each other, and maybe we just want to do our own thing. But I think when we eventually do kind of separate and go, live different lives that way, I think that the relationship with my younger sister will just continue to thrive and grow. And I'm really looking forward to that because I feel like sharing, that relationship with my twin, it creates just a different dynamic with your other sister. So it'll be really fun to see how that changes throughout the years and into the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, with having older sisters as twins, you're talking about the third wheel. Oh, absolutely. It affected me a lot, with their heavy teasing and trying to get me to be obedient and mothering me, and so I so feel your story. Just trying to be your own person and still feel like you belong, because I was always kind of left out with what the girls were doing. And so I so feel that.
Yeah.
And so I know this will touch, a lot of hearts. And I just want to let you know, you can find Lindsey on her LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/Lindsey Linton. It's on the screen here for you. And I am so thrilled that you came to share. And, you allowed yourself to tell those vulnerable stories, because we don't always want to share that we didn't feel like we fit in. We want to kind of put a happy face on our sticker on our faces and say we're all good. We got this together, when we don't. When there are things that are holding us back and making us mute our voices. So I am so thankful that you were able to do this and share your story about Ireland and how that's bringing forward, your transformation into unmuting and you becoming who you are and expressing life in that way. So, is there anything else you would like to share with us before we close today?
I would say that, another thing that I learned throughout the process is just support and how important it is. And also that support isn't right in your face. Sometimes, even when I went on my trip, you just assume, oh, family, friends, that's your support. Sometimes you find support along the way and you meet different people and you get exposed to just different environments and you just never know. There's a world out there that I think we just don't realize. I'm sure there's twin support groups that I don't know about either. And even for my trip, I ended up, a few years back, all three of us, our sister went on a sister's trip. And we went to New York. We ended up meeting a solo traveler who was from Australia, who I'm still friends on Facebook with to this day. And the whole time she was messaging me, making sure things were okay. But afterwards, she had asked me, sent me a link to join this female solo group, travelers group on Facebook. And I was like, wow, I wish I would have known about this sooner because, it just was neat to see all the different stories, some of the challenges that people had. So support has been like just the ultimate theme of my life. And I think, you can't go through these things by yourself. I think you have to have somebody to talk to. And I will say that coaching, I couldn't live without it. Coaching has been the most helpful thing for me. So I would say like support's a big thing and just learning to trust yourself too. You have to just trust that you're the best version of yourself and just love yourself, truly love yourself and embrace it.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And I know if you've watched my show very often or listened to the podcast, I am a huge proponent of coaching. And so Lindsey's coach is Lori Raggio, who also has been on this show multiple times. And she also has a chapter in the book that's upcoming. And this is going to, of course, all of the podcast is going to culminate into a book anthology, a collective stories book. So each of these podcasts, the authors will have chapters in this book. So you'll get to have all of these stories in one place and read their inspiration. And I am so excited to have this coming out in January of 2023. And you can find all of that on the wearejoybooks.com. As it's coming out soon, and it will be in the We Are Joy book series. So I'm so looking forward to that. And is there anything else you want to say before we end here?
I don't think so. It's been a pleasure being part of this journey, and I'm proud to be part of all the women that are in this book and in this podcast series. It's truly wonderful.
Yes. I love it. I love you all. Thank you so much for joining us. And I greatly appreciate you. And remember, you are joy, looking for a way to express.